Hi, 8th graders. I am going to do a Chapter 8 review for your guys' test. I'm looking at our notes that we have filled out for this chapter. We've got the preview, and the reason why this preview was so important was because of it refreshed our memory about area, and the reason why that's important for this chapter specifically is we needed this because that was big B in all of our formulas for volume. So remember, big B is the area of a circle, which is just pi r squared. The first thing we learned was how to find the volume of a cylinder. This was in my opinion, the most easiest of the formulas that we learned because it was just two things, base times height. But more specifically, the area of the base times height. So remember, area of the base is pi r squared. All we needed was a radius. We needed to square the radius and then times it by pi. After we did that, you just multiply by the height of the cylinder. I've got two examples that show how to find the volume, and then we have this example over here, how to find the height. So if the height was missing, I did tell you that it was important to write the formula down first, and then just fill in the things you knew. We learned throughout the chapter to be very careful because sometimes they tell us the volume is 176 pi. So then we had to fill that out, fix it. It got complicated when they put the pi there, but now you're hyper aware of that. Something else that you guys have learned to be aware of is when they give you a diameter versus when they give you just a radius. So you wouldn't plug in 8 for the radius here, you would plug in 4. Those are just some little tips and tricks that you guys have learned over this chapter to be on the watch out for. After cylinders, we talked about cones. If you remember, I stood at the front of the classroom with a bucket of water. I filled that cone 3 times, and then it filled the cylinder. So that's why we take the same formula when finding the volume of a cylinder, but then we divide it by 3 or multiply it by a third, because 3 of these could fill up 1 cylinder. Okay? 1/3 base times height, or, base times height divided by 3. We have 2 examples of how to find the volume, and then we have an example of how to find an unknown, like the height. After that, we talked about spheres. Now, this is when I opened up the tennis ball, and I showed you that there are 4 3-dimensional circles, and that was a way for you to remember that we need 4 3-dimensional circles, 4/3, okay? 4/3, pi r cubed. This is super important. I think a lot of kids will forget that that's a cube instead of a square. It's a cube. 4/3, pi r cubed. All you have to do is take the radius, cube it, times it by pi, times it by 4/3. Pretty easy if you have a calculator. It's just a lot of number crunching. I gave you 2 examples of how to find the volume, and then we mixed it up a little bit and said, how do you find the radius? And this one got a little complex. I did write it down step by step because this looks chaotic and confusing. But step 1, we just filled in the information that we knew from the formula. So first I wrote the formula without anything in, and then I popped in the things that they gave me. They told me the volume was 288 pi, and this is where we had some things to remember. We put the pi up with the 4, and then we were able to get rid of the reciprocal. So then we multiplied by the reciprocal, we were able to cancel out the pi's, and then we were able to cube root it to find r. So this one was a little bit more complex compared to all the other ones where you had to find find height. Those ones are a little bit more, straightforward, just get the variable alone type stuff. These ones were a little bit harder, so maybe we'll do some examples of those in this video too. After that, we talked about composite shapes. No new information here, except for, we learned about a hemisphere, and all you do is take the volume of a sphere and divide it by 2 to find a hemisphere. But with composite shapes, I just want you to keep your work as organized as possible and just work on shape by shape by shape. After that, we learned about similar solids, and these are just a lot of proportions, setting up proportions and finding unknowns. If they're asking, are they similar? All you have to do is set up proportions and then just cross multiply and find out if those fractions are all the same fraction. Sometimes they'll tell you these are similar, find the unknown dimension. And if they do that, then you could just set up proportions, solve for the unknown. Over here, we learned that similar figures will have similar surface areas and volume. Kind of like way back in chapter 2. Instead of actually finding surface area and actually finding volume, we can set up proportions and say, okay, if I know this side is 4 and this side is 6, and I know the surface area of the blue figure is this, could I find the surface area of the red? And we definitely can. First, we set up a proportion of their side lengths. We square it because we're trying to find surface area. Area is always squared. And then we set it equal to the surface area they gave us over the one we're looking for. After we did that math, we just cross-multiplied. We found the surface area. Down here, volume is the exact same thing. You set up a proportion based on what they gave you. So 10 is to 12 as 7,850 is to unknown. But this time we cubed it because we're trying to find the volume. Volume is always cubed. All right, and that was it. Those were all of our notes that we needed and used. Now, if I go back to the book, this is the chapter review on page 363. I'm just going to kind of do an example from each of these sections to kind of just help refresh your memory on these harder ones. All right. If you would like, so that you're not just sitting there bored listening to me talk and falling asleep, I would like you to get out a piece of paper. You can do these problems with me. We'll number them. That way, when you turn it in, I'll know that you actually did the work and are, getting it. 8.1, volumes of cylinders. Let's go ahead and just do one of these problems. It says find the volume of the cylinder, round your answer to the nearest tenth. Let's do number 3. So grab a piece of paper. I'll find mine. At the top of your paper, you can write chapter 8 review and your name. Get out a calculator, because you're going to want to do this work with me so that it makes sense. And write number 3. All right, number 3, we're trying to find the volume. The very first thing you need to do is just write down the formula. Volume equals big B times H. If you skip this step, obviously if you skip it for the cylinders, it's not a big deal, it's pretty easy. But if you skip this step of writing down the formula first, you're going to get confused when you get to the more complicated stuff. Always write down the formula first. All right, now we plug in the things we know. We are looking for volume. I know the height is 12, and I know I can find big B. Big B is the radius squared times pi. Radius is 3. 3 squared is 9. 9 times pi, I've got my calculator. It is 28.27, so I'm going to round that to the nearest tenth because that's what the directions say to do, is round to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to say that's 28.3. Or, if you're like me, you can leave that in your calculator and get a very precise answer by just now saying that times 12. Okay. Now that I've taken that times 12, you should too on your calculator. You should get the volume. The volume is 339.3. I rounded that up. And then we have to label it correctly. Yards, because I see yards. Cubed, because we found volume. All right, let's move on. This is still 8.1. It says find the missing dimension. It looks like number 5, the height is missing. When the height is missing, I feel like those problems are pretty simple to solve. You still need to fill out the formula, V equals big B times H. But the reason why I say it's simple to solve is because once you find big B, you just divide it by the volume, and then you'll find H. It's problems like number 6 that have a few more extra steps to them when the radius is missing. So I would like to do 6 with you. Go and write number 6 on your paper. We are trying to find the radius. First step, always, write down the formula. Okay? Fill in the things we know. I know the height is 20. I know the volume is 7,599. They didn't try to trick me with a pi symbol. Okay, that's all you have to do. Just fill in the things you know. Now that we've filled in the things we know, I need to get b by itself. To do that, I need to divide by 20 to both sides. I got my calculator, 7,599 divided by 20. 379.95 equals big B. Now, obviously, big B is not the radius. Big B is the area of the circle. So if I think about it that way, I'm going to kind of do a little reversey here. How do you find big B normally? Well, normally it's just pi r squared, right? Just like area. So use that formula, but this time plug in B. We know B. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. It's going to be 379.95 equals pi times the radius squared. My job is to get radius by itself. It's being multiplied by pi and it's being squared. I need to get pi gone first. The opposite of being multiplied by pi is to divide by pi. So in my calculator, I still have 379.95. I'm going to just go ahead and hit divide by pi. Okay, I'm going to move over here because I'm running out of space. After dividing by pi, I got 120.9, and that equals, what am I left with over here? These pi's are gone, just r squared. How do I get that little squared away from my r? Do the opposite of squaring, which is to square root. So in my calculator, I'm going to say square root of 120.9. All right, after doing that, I got the radius equals 10.99. I can round that up to the nearest tenth, which would bump this all the way up to 11. So my radius is 11 meters. Woo, hopefully you guys are following along with me and writing all of this down. If not, rewind the video, start again, pause it when you need to. Let's go on to 8.2. 8.2, we were finding the volume of cones. Remember, it's the same as finding the volume of a cylinder. You just divide by 3. All right, let's do number 8. So on your paper, write number 8. We're finding the volume. First step, write down the formula. Volume equals big B times H divided by 3 because 3 of those filled up a cylinder. Plug in the things I know. I know I can find big B. The whole diameter, I know that they're talking about the diameter, even though they're pointing to just this section, they wouldn't point to just that section if they drew the whole thing. So the whole thing is 4, which means the radius is 2, okay? Find big B. 2 squared is 4. 4 times pi. 12.566. I'm going to say 12.6. So I'm going to plug that in. Volume equals 12.6 times the height, and that is 10, divided by 3. So in my calculator, I'm not going to hit clear. I still got 12.56637, whatever. I'm going to take that times 10, and then I'm going to divide it by 3. After doing that, the volume is 41.88, which would bump that up to 41.9. Label it correctly, centimeters cubed. And then circle your answer. You got it. Finding the volume is pretty self-explanatory. It's when you get unknown things like number 9, finding the height. Honestly, though, I think finding height is a lot nicer than trying to find radius or something. All right, let's do number 9. Write number 9 in your notes. Remember, pause it if I go too fast. That's the beauty of having this on a video. All right, step 1, write the formula. Volume equals big B times H divided by 3. Fill in the things I know. I know the volume is 3,052. I know I can find big B. That's 9 squared. 9 times 9 is 81. 81 times pi. 254 point, I'm going to round that up to 5. Do I know H? No. So I'm just going to leave it as H and divide it all by 3. All right, my job now is to get h by itself. To do that, I can't get rid of this before I get rid of this. This divide by 3 acts like a grouping symbol. It's basically saying you can't touch anything up here until I'm gone. So let's get rid of the divide by 3 by doing the opposite, which is to multiply both sides by 3. That would cancel these two out. So now in my calculator, I'm going to take 3 times 3,052. I got 9,156. Okay, now I still need to get h by itself. To do that, I can divide by 254.5 to both sides. All right, after doing that, I got the height equals 35.97, which I can round that up to 36 inches. And remember, it's not squared, it's just the height. Very good. All right, that was section 2. Section 3, we talked about the volume of a sphere. And we also talked about composite shapes. Oh boy. Let's do 10 and 11, because 11 has the radius missing. That might be a good one for us to do. Number 10, find the volume. First step, always write down the formula. Volume equals, remember this is a sphere. When I opened up the tennis ball, there was 4 three-dimensional circles. So it's going to be 4/3 times the pi times the radius cubed because it's volume. Let's fill in the things we know. I know the radius is 12. So in my calculator, I'm going to take 12 to the third. Remember, if your calculator doesn't have like a little X with a 3 above it, that means like, that would be the cubed button. There's a button that looks like this, looks like a little caret. We call that a little arrow or a caret. That means to the power of. So you hit that and then you can say to the power of 3. So that's what I did. I said 12 to the power of 3. And that got me 1,728. Now you literally just take your calculator, clear it all out, start from the left, go to the right. 4 divided by 3, enter. Times that by pi, enter. Times that by 1,728. Volume equals 7,238.2 feet cubed. Finding volume is always very self-explanatory. You just fill in some things, number crunch, and you're done. It's when we get to problems like number 11. All right, write number 11 down. Stay with me. It's going to be complicated, but we can do this. First step, always write down the formula. Volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. Fill in the things we know. They put the little pi symbol here. Remember when in class, some of you won't remember this because this is the other class, but Riley was saying, hey, how about instead of multiplying this by pi and then getting this huge honkin' number over here, can I just leave it like that? Because then aren't I getting rid of the pi eventually anyway? And it'll cancel out? Yeah, so literally just copy that down. I've got 12,348 pi for my volume. 4/3 pi, the radius is what we don't know, cubed. Okay, if you're thinking back to your notes, which I'm hoping you kind of are, I just did step 1. Step 1 said, fill in the information we know from the formula. That's all we've done. I just filled in volume, that's it. Step 2, put the pi up by the 4 in the 4/3. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. I've got 12,348 pi equals 4 pi thirds times the radius cubed. Once I put that pi up there, now I can multiply by the reciprocal of 4 pi thirds to both sides to get rid of it. The reciprocal of 4 pi thirds is 3/4 pi. I'm going to multiply that to both sides. 3/4 pi. that would get this 4 pi thirds, this one to cancel out. Okay, they're gone. That's great. R cubed is left. Now let's look over here. This is where this math works and why it works. If I put this over 1 so that I can multiply these as fractions, right? Technically, I'm taking the tops times the tops, the bottoms times the bottoms. I've got 3 times 12,348 pi on top of 4 pi times 1. Isn't that just 4 pi? So here's what Riley was saying. Riley's saying, hey, I'm so glad we left the pi's alone because look what happens when you have a pi over a pi. Isn't that one whole? Pi over pi is 1. So my pi's go away. And now these are plain numbers. These are just normal numbers that we can just crunch into our calculator. I've got 3 times 12,348. Oops, I don't want to forget the equals r cubed over here. Sorry. Okay, so I've got, I times those top numbers. Now I'm going to divide it by 4. And now I've got 9,261 equals the radius cubed. Oh my gosh, you guys, we're so close to being done. In our steps, we just canceled out the pi's and just did the math. Now we're at our very last step. Cube root the answer to find r. Cube root it. Cube root it. If your calculator is like my calculator, I don't have a cube root button, which makes this kind of complex. What I always tell you guys to do is start with 5. What is 5 to the third? 5 to the third is 125. I need something to equal 9,261, which means I need to go a lot higher than 5. I'm going to try, I know what 10 cubed is. 10 cubed is 1,000. So I need to go higher than 10. Let's try 20 cubed. 20 to the third is 8,000. So I need to go a little higher than that. 21 to the third. 21 to the third, and I did that in my calculator just now. I got 9,261. I found it. Okay, so remember, the best guess and check system, start at 5, maybe go to 10, see where you need to go from there, okay? Guessing and checking, there's nothing wrong with it. I just found out that the cube root of that number is 21, and that'll be r. So yes, finding a radius, very complex in a sphere. Lots of steps. The big thing you have to remember is keep your pi's in the formula because eventually they're going to go goodbye-bye. And then you just have to cube root things. It's not that bad, honestly. Okay. I'm going to go and erase this. Remember, you can always pause the video if you need to. Let's go ahead and find a composite solid. Let's do, ooh, number 12 looks fun. Number 12 is just 2 cones though. Cones. It's pretty easy. 13 is a cube, or not a cube, sorry, a rectangular prism. That might be a good one to kind of, refresh your memory with, just because, we haven't done a whole lot of volumes of those solids. Now, if you remember in your notes, I really like you to keep things organized, right? The first thing I want you to do is just write the formulas for both of these things for volume. So I'm going to do the pyramid first on top. Okay, so, ooh, we haven't really talked about finding the volume of a square pyramid, did we? Interesting. Ooh, guys, I would probably not do 13 on the test because we never talked about finding the volume of a square pyramid. That is from 7th grade with Miss Sykes. So I'm going to go ahead and scooch over and let's do 14 for now. So in your notes, in your book, we're going to do 14. Okay. So first, write down the formula for the first thing I want to find. Let's do the hemisphere just to get it over with in our lives, right? Volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed divided by 2. It's a hemisphere. The next one would be volume equals big B times h. I like to work left to right to keep our work organized. The next thing we need to do is fill in the things we know. Let's work on the top. Volume equals 4/3 pi times the radius, which is 2, cubed over 2. So let's go ahead and just start solving. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So I'm going to turn that now into an 8, okay? So I'm going to take in my calculator, 4 divided by 3 for 4/3, times that by pi, times that by 8, then divide it all by 2. Volume equals 16.75, which would be 8 centimeters cubed. All right, now let's go work on the next guy. Fill in the things I know. I can find the area of the base. The area of the base would be 2 squared, which is 4. 4 times pi is 12.6. 12.6 times the height, which is 4. Okay, 12.6 times 4. And I got the volume to equal 50.3 centimeters cubed. Now remember, if in your notes we drew a line underneath, now we're going to find the total. And simply just take 16.8 plus 50.3, boop, 67.1 centimeters cubed. All right, so in composite shapes, try to keep your work as organized as possible. It'll help you so that you don't make any mistakes. All right, guys, we're almost done. Last section, talked about surface areas and volumes of similar figures. Let's go look at 15 and 16. It says the solids are similar. That's nice. Find the surface area or the volume of red solids and round your answer to the nearest tenth. Okay, so number 15, I'm going to put my work up here, guys, because my paper, it can't go any further down. So my work is going to go up. I apologize for that. I hate that too, but it'll be okay. Okay, so I'm looking for the volume. I don't know volume of this red figure, but I do have some heights and I do know the volume of this, so I'm going to set up some proportions. Let's go ahead and say 12 is to 24 as, now I did my red shape first, so I'm going to do my red shape first for my volume. X is to 4,608. Now remember, this is volume. Volume is cubed, which means I need to cube the heights. And then I can cross multiply. So 12 to the third is 1,728. 24 to the third is, 13,824. The reason why I don't cube this side is because this is volume. Volume already is cubed. Like, see, it already is cubed down here. So yeah, don't cube these guys, just cube the sides that aren't. That's just heights. I've got to cube them. Now we just times divide. Times the two numbers that are across from one another. Whatever you get, divide it by that guy. 1728 times 4,608. Make sure I type those in right. Then divide by 13,824. Okay, so after doing all that number crunching, X equaled 576. Now remember, we were trying to find volume. So that means the volume of red square pyramid is 576 meters cubed. Okay, now same thing over here for number 16. 16 is the same thing, except for I'm trying to find the surface area. And instead of cubing it like I did over here, I need to square it. Okay, so I'm going to have 6 is to 8 as my unknown surface area is to 154. Remember, surface area is always squared, so that means I'm going to take these and square it. 6 times 6 is 36. 8 times 8 went on a date, then they came back with 48. Okay, times the two that I know, so I've got 36 times 154. Divide that by 48. X equals 115.5 yards squared. That would be the surface area of the red. All right, and then the next page is a practice chapter test. I think you guys are going to do pretty well on this test. I honestly think if you study, watch this video, I will be in class early that day. So, I'll be at school. It's like 7:45. So if you want to come in for extra help or have any questions, just let me know. I would be happy to help you. If you have problems on here that didn't make sense as we did it, star them, let me know. We can talk about them too. But hopefully you guys did well following this video and it kind of refreshed a few things for you. Don't forget to turn this paper in at the end of the period with your name on it. All right, good luck, guys.